Welcome to our YouTube channel, Moneyline with Nancy TV. This is where you get the latest updates on business, finance, economy, market, as well as investment information. If you couldn't follow us live on television, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, press the notification bell so that you can get notifications. Thank you. Enjoy this video. Welcome back. Victor Alikor is our guest. He's a development economist and a policy analyst. We're still looking at addressing poverty as well as inequality in Nigeria. Welcome, Victor, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. Happy New Year, Nancy.
Oh, Happy New Year. Yeah, 3 weeks into the new year.
Yeah.
So the new year is almost old.
Yeah?
All right, let's get started. Can you give me really your views about poverty in Nigeria? And let's take a look at it from this perspective that Nigeria is a resource-blessed country, all rich. You know what they call the Dutch disease and the resource costs, as it were. What do you think is really happening that for a country like Nigeria, amongst other nations that have the same resources that we have, we still have a lot of people that are in poverty? I love watching documentaries about Dubai. You know, anytime I see documentary about Dubai, because that is just a country that just a few years ago, about like 50 years or so, found, and if you read the book also by the leader of Dubai, My Vision, you understand what it takes to be a leader and to transform those kind of countries. And when I'm watching documentaries about Dubai, for instance, I'm saying, we can actually do this. But some people will say, okay, Nigeria is more. Our population is more and all of that. You know, you begin to see excuses and all of that. So what do you think about the Dutch disease and the resource costs? Is Nigeria a cost country in terms of that we can't develop and lift people out of poverty?
Yeah, fantastic question. So I was happy with your intro when you mentioned China. China, because if you look at history or statistics, China currently has, or is considered as a nation that exited the highest number of people out of poverty at a record time. And China asked 3 key questions. Who are the poor? Why are they poor? And what do they need? I'm hoping that at the end of this session, we'll be able to look at those 3 key headlines. But if you look at poverty in Nigeria, it's worrisome because if you look at the numbers, the World Bank report said 129 million Nigerians are living below the poverty rate. If you also look at our statistics from housing, the number says 24.4 million Nigerians lack access to housing. If you look at education, we have 18 to 20 million Nigerians that are out of school children. If you look at health, the Minister of Health is telling us over 90% of Nigerians do not have access to the National Health Insurance Scheme or are not covered. That's over 200 million Nigerians. Again, if you also look at issues around impact of these government policies on Nigerians, you will agree with me that poverty in Nigeria is not something that is strange to us. The numbers keep growing by the day, but the biggest worry or the biggest elephant in the room is how do we exit vast majority of Nigerians out of poverty. But then if we take a look, why would I agree that majority of the reasons behind vast majority of Nigerians falling below poverty line is government policies? Again, we also see some external policies that are also responsible for Nigerians falling below the poverty line. But like you rightly mentioned, I'm not sure when Mr. President told Nigerians renewed hope agenda. One of the things Nigerians want to see is genuinely renewed hope in terms of access to the basic needs of life. So when we say poverty, what does it naturally mean? It means a man or a woman that do not have access to the basic needs of life: food, shelter, and clothing, and more recently, health and education. So if you look at the numbers from the health, look at the numbers from education, look at the numbers from electricity, over 90 million Nigerians are energy poor. Summing all of this together is what we consider as multi-dimensional poverty. So looking at poverty from the economic side, looking at it from the health, education, looking at it from housing, and other basic needs that make life affordable for Nigerians. So in the case of Nigeria, 129 million Nigerians, according to the World Bank, and multi-dimensional statistics by MBS is saying 133 million. That's the old statistics. These numbers are shocking, I must confess.
That's even the old statistics. We don't have the new
recent one.
Yes, we don't. And I think that statistics was 2022.
Yes, 2022.
133 million. I hope the MBS will not say they are revising that one and bring out a new methodology. as we're expecting for CPI and GDP. Now, you mentioned very critical things. Who are the poor amongst us? NBS says there are 133 million people. Who are the poor amongst us? They don't have the basic needs, including health and education, food, clothing, and shelter. The next question will really be, how do we, like I mentioned earlier on, how do we now, or what steps should we take, really? I'm talking about the government, because it's really on the doorsteps of the government that we encourage private sector, as it were, to be able to create a robust economy, you know, for the poor to breathe, according to what the president said. So can you like enumerate 2 or 3 steps that can be taken really to break free from the resource costs that we've had and transfer wealth, you know, to the people, to ensure that wealth flow? I was watching the news, I think either 2 days ago now, where the leaders of Ogoniland paid a visit to the president, you know, and they were making a lot of demands. We know what has been on in the Ogoniland for a long time in terms of, okay, a large percentage of oil is gotten from that land. Those people don't have access to good schools. You even take a look at the houses they live in. Their immediate source of livelihood has been damaged. They don't have good rivers to even take even the basic source of livelihood in terms of fishing and all of that. And the president has given the NSA, Nuhu Rebadu, you know, an assignment to be able to get that done. At the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, the president is also being political here. However, he has told them, sheet your salts, guys. Whatever is the matter of the past, let it really stay in the past, but I want us to move forward here now. You would also know that the golden goose that lays the golden egg is within that region. So the President Tinubu is looking at money. If we're able to restore this place, we can make more money in terms of oil. He needs to meet his target for the budget 2025.
2 million barrels.
Yes, but the question is, what happens to the people of Ogoni? Amongst others, I'm just using this as an example. You understand? There are other places, even in Nigeria, if it's not oil, there's something. There's gold, there's palm oil, there's cocoa. And there are countries in this world that don't have oil, that don't even have one natural resource, that they are islands, but they are very rich. And we go there for holidays. I'm talking of them. They go there for holidays. Yes. Some of them even have houses there. So what does it take for us to ensure wealth flows to the poor in the country?
Fantastic question. But I must confess that good enough you mentioned the Dutch disease. Dutch disease because it's a humongous concern for most Nigerians. But if you look at the question, 3 areas we can diversify our effort, or government effort, to see that we improve on existing norms. Number 1, I want to make bold to say that if you look at our 2025 budget allocation, because our budget will show where our economic priorities as a nation are. Number 1, if you look at education, 7% was given to education. Look at health, 5% was given to health. UNESCO is advocating for 26%. Abuja Declaration that was done here in 2001 is advocating for 15% of your entire budget for health. But I think Nigerians or government per se can focus our efforts on these 2 key areas. And that's why when you hear the concept of human capital index or human development index, it's centered around education, health, and research. Look at education, for instance. I think Nigeria, we have one of the youngest populations in the world, considered in the next 2050, sub-Saharan Africa, led by Nigeria, would house over majority of the human workforce we have globally. But I think the government can diversify towards education. That's key. But if we look at what we have at the moment from the government side, can education help us? Yes, it can. But has the government schools, I mean at the tertiary level, secondary level, and at the primary level, is it functional? No, it then means we have to look at private sector. And I think education is one key area where Nigerians can benefit or shift in terms of wealth transfer. Look at the concept when you talk of women's economic empowerment. The greatest women's economic empowerment you can give to a woman is education. So I think education is one key area. And then the second area we can also look at is health. Statistics have proven that some of the best doctors or health practitioners globally are Nigerians. So we can take a lead from what India did. India had a government policy framework where they gave about nearly 0% interest rate on some of the health professionals, experts outside the country to come back to the country and invest in the country. And today, India is considered as a health tourist nation globally in terms of health tourism. So health tourism is another area I think we can tap into our huge human resource potentials. Remember when you talked of...
talking of health tourism, just yesterday, the CMDs of hospitals in Nigeria are lamenting and saying that in the next 1 or 2 years or thereabout, I think 5 years, if we don't attend to that situation, that our hospitals will be empty in terms of qualified professionals. You've seen that a lot of doctors are leaving, a lot of nurses are leaving, and they are leaving on the basis of, okay, we don't even have good equipment to work, the remuneration is not encouraging, the environment, you can't even go to a standard. At our editorial meeting yesterday, we were even looking at it, that you can just enter a toilet, a toilet in a public hospital. You can't even, or you go to a hospital, they will give you a list to go and buy medicine.
That's correct.
Do you understand? Their own pharmacies. So a whole lot of stuff. So if you're talking about India, we know that even people from here leave when they have health emergencies, go to India, you know, for treatments and all of that. Are you saying perhaps we should look at health when our people here, let's even sort ourselves first?
So, but I think I even spoke to one of the commissioners. I won't mention the state. And I asked the commissioner, I worked for a Canadian firm. And one of the key things I looked in Canada, they have what they call Canada Tech Talent Strategy. And that tech talent strategy is to make Canada a tech nomad for tech professionals globally to attract and retain their tech talents. So can we have something like a health talent strategy in Nigeria in the sense that no matter the number of doctors or nurses that are leaving the country, we have enough, we have human resources, we have institutions. Is it to build more schools? Is it to give scholarship for these individuals in these health professions? But then, like I said, we don't have a health talent retention strategy as a nation. And these are conscious efforts that will be built by individuals. You must have followed the news around the nurses council having some squabble with the government trying to place some regulations against having our nurses moving to other countries. They will move, but down to even education strategy. So we're losing a lot of our young talent. And I was going to come to the third, which is technology for me. A vast majority of Nigerians who ideally is supposed to help build our economy are leaving the country to other countries. Do we have a tech talent or a human resource talent strategy to retain these individuals? That no matter the number of people that leaves, take for instance China, take for instance India. They have influx of Indians in Canada, in US, in the UK, but they have enough talent strategy in the economy to run the economy. But in the case of Nigeria, we don't have that. So for me, if you look at some of the big issues, and if you look at when issues around the NSAS, the End Bad Governance protests has come from Nigerians, we have a young and youthful population. And I think it's something we're not tapping into. When you mention resources, remember we have natural resources and we have human resources. And again, recently we have technological resources. And we want to see that the government is looking at this direction. Nigeria has huge youthful population that if we introduce technology to these young people, leverage on technology alone. Remember, we have some Nigerian companies who are considered unicorn companies that have over $1 billion valuation. So we can have Nigerian youth who you focus on technology, for instance. And I tell people, technology is not the machine, but it's the knowledge to operate the machines. That is technology.
Okay, since you're talking about youth, and let's dwell there a bit. And like you mentioned earlier, and I've always said it on the show, that the median age, the average age of a Nigerian is 18 years.
18 years.
I've always said, in case people don't understand, if Nigeria is a human being, that human being is 18
years.
That's what it means. So when I talk to policymakers at even different fora, I try to make them understand that you need to plan for that 18-year-old child, 18-year-old adult, because since 18 is considered an adult, from age 0 to that 18, to even post 18. So if we have a serious government, they will be thinking of those kind of policies that from birth to even when that person retires and when that person is old. Now, having said that, since we have about 60% of Nigerians under 25, what kind of role, and let me put it back this way, I will ask you two questions in one. What kind of role do you think that young people should play too in creating solutions for poverty as well as inequality That's one. Like something you mentioned earlier where we have unicorns. And those unicorns were created by young people.
Nigerians.
So what other things can we see from the young people of today to create solutions against poverty and inequality? The other thing is that what barriers are making the young people, what deliberate barriers should government take out to make young people create solutions against poverty? Since like the old people are in our midst, they've been ruling since we don't have anything. That does not mean that also when there's a young person, that young person will be a good leader. I hope you understand what I mean.
Yes.
But the issue is, are there barriers that deliberately exclude young people from meaningful participation? Because if you take a look at even other industrialized countries, you will see that majority of even the industrialized countries don't even have so many young people. If you take a look at Europe now, Asia, they are complaining of their population is no longer young.
Yes.
But for Nigeria, we're not taking advantage of that.
Fantastic. So if you look, the first question, you talked about what can the young people do. Number one, which I think a vast majority of Nigerians are doing it, is innovation. And that's why when one of the former presidents said Nigerian youths are lazy, for me, I felt it was a careless statement. Nigerian youths should focus around innovation. But again, for you to look at what they need to do, it then means there needs to be some bit of support from the angle of the government. But one, I think, is innovation. Nigerian youths, are they doing it at the moment? Yes, I think they are. Yeah, if you read the book, The Bright Continent, it was written by Lopade, a bright young Nigerian. She mentioned the Kanju spirit. And the spirit of Kanju is making out something almost out of nothing. Innovation is one key area Nigerian youth can focus on. And I think they are doing it currently. Why did I mention innovation? Innovation can come in two forms, either doing something new or doing something that is currently in existence from a different perspective. Why am I mentioning this innovation? Nigerian youth, again, is critical for us around technology, around agriculture, around energy, around the different trending spaces we want to play in to bring in innovation. You see young Nigerian youth who are striving on WhatsApp. Perhaps they are graduates, they don't have a job. On WhatsApp, they're thinking of innovative ways of selling their businesses. On social media, they're involving in marketing in TikTok. Look at, for instance, the content creation economy, which is one of the biggest economy, where Nigerians are coming up with innovative ways to make money in dollars, create content on social media, and earn a living for themselves. Are they doing it? Yes, we are doing it.
Well,
the
are they doing it in sufficient areas?
Yeah.
Agreed, there's content creation economy. At least in the creative space, we should give it to these guys.
Yes.
The creative space is doing it well. But are we also seeing that kind of innovation from young people taking the bulls by the horns and saying, I've got to get out of poverty, perhaps even around STEM? And these are also areas that would develop a society. Like we've seen around science, around technology, around innovation, around education. We've seen good innovations even around health, you know. But are we seeing a lot more there too? I hope you understand what I'm,
I
what I'm
understand
talking. So it's not just about
the STEM you mentioned.
the creative economy or the arts alone.
So the STEM you mentioned, for instance, take a look at science. I saw, I think, a report recently that the highest paid artificial intelligence engineer in the world is a Nigerian, a guy from Southwest. That's commendable. STEM technology, I mentioned the unicorn companies. Look at the top companies in MoneyPoint, for instance. It was an idea by some Nigerians. They are young people. That's technology. We're doing well. Look at, we have seen innovations by some guys from the southeastern part of this country around producing small cars. We have seen the guy in Maiduguri who produced a car that will run on water, on electricity. These are innovations from a smaller angle, remember, with zero or little or no support. So I think we are currently doing it around STEM. But again, another area I also want Nigerian youth to also focus on what they can do, like you asked, is on demanding for good governance. And I want us to beam our satellite not only at the federal level. I want us to shift that same energy to the subnationals, to the states, to the regional government. Remember, look at the sharing formula of revenue. 57% goes to the federal, 57% goes to the federal, about 43% goes to the state and the local government. That's a huge, so if we can beam our searchlight demanding for good governance and accountability from our state governors and our local government that are closer to us than the federal, I think it would help us. Again, let me go to the question you asked around what are the challenges, what are the intentional challenges? And again, I mentioned clearly that one key way we can intentional challenges or impediments that are holding Nigerians youth down in terms of development is inclusion in governance. Mr. President had mentioned in one of his recent statements where he said we're going to have a youth confab. We're still waiting. Up till now, we're still waiting to have that youth confab here in FCT, perhaps aggregating the different youth bodies in Nigeria, trying to understand what are the biggest issues. Another issue that is also holding them back, apart from participation in governance, is electricity. Nigeria is one of the greatest countries we want to see that is talking of industrialization without considering electricity. You can't talk of industrialization without electricity. Nigerians are doing their small bit. Look at the increase in tariff, for instance, from the telecom. These are impediments. These are challenges that are negating Nigerian youths from improving on their abilities around innovation, driving them out of poverty and all that. These are key issues we should look at. And again, another critical factor, perhaps I think is, let's look at our budget. Our budget will show you clearly what your national priorities are. In the last decade, we have had security and interior has taken bulk or a greatest chunk of our national budget. But then Nigerians are asking questions. How do you give 5% for education? How do you give, 7% for education? How do you give 5% for health? Where is the angle around research, for instance? And I tell people, when we had the tomato Ebola conversation and all, we should have research, and some persons have advocated in some books, that we should have at least 2% of your GDP on research, budgeted for research. And it's not a fluke.
But the question is that we even have a lot of researchers in this country lying on the shelves of different universities. Or what kind of research are you talking about?
No. So what we have is a duplication of research. We have people repeating just for the purpose of just passing or getting A's and B's.
Because where we're actually
research.
going to is that even in our educational institutions, I've spoken to a lot of professors, even in the science field and all of that, that have come up with a lot of innovation in that. But there's no funding. Okay, take a look at, I think, was it during COVID, where the CBN even at that time gave, whether it was grants to researchers at that time, Nigerian researchers, even in the medical field, to come up with our own Nigerianized solutions. I don't know about that. So what I'm trying to say, in essence, is that even the ones we have now, we are not capitalizing on those ones to commercialize them and make money.
So you feel they are research,
yeah.
But I feel, and I know for a fact, if you look at Scopus Index, some top journals for research, Nigerians, even in Africa, is not. Look at innovation, for instance. Nigeria is not even among the top 5. We're not even in the top 10 in innovation. In Africa, despite our population, despite being the largest in number. So you think it's research? What we see in the university is duplication of efforts. People just go to take projects that was written in 1970, 1980, modernize it. And that's not research. You mentioned STEM. I mean, research in science and technology. We are not seeing it because, again, like you mentioned, there is lack of support from the government in terms of funding. But there are international institutions recently who are coming up with funding for innovations or research, regardless of the institution. We have seen several universities, even my alma mater, University of Port Harcourt, we have seen where they're posted on several occasions. Professors from the university who broke the ground in the global field around research, and they got funding. Remember the Nigerian who was a historian. Remember the Nigerian who was a mathematician, a professor of mathematics. That got funding. So funding are coming from international organizations. But locally, do we prioritize research? We see research as money. We just give some peanuts to consultants. They just come up with something that will be thrown under the carpet. Those recommendations, are they being put into good use? Again, that's where political will comes into play. People begin to argue that we have policies, perhaps. We have some bit of research, like you mentioned. But are we making good use of this recommendation? Mr. President's economic team, for instance, I can tell you for free, they have some intelligent and smart economists. Mr. President's team, is he listening to them? And that brings us to the question is,
why are talking of the economic team?
Yes. Why do we even craft policies in Nigeria? I ask people, why do we make policies?
I've not even heard the economic team made since that time.
Do we make policies for the purpose of winning elections or for the purpose of driving real change and transformation? Nancy, we're talking of poverty. Look at in the past. We have had development models where we gained independence. We started from the import substitution. We had SAP. Obasanjo came on board. We had the needs. Jonathan came on board. We had the Vision 2020. Buhari's government. We had ERGP, Economic Recovery Growth Plan. Yes. That's in our first, when we had recession in 2016. 2020 after COVID, we had SPC, that's Economic Sustainability Plan, ESP. Recently, we have the National Development Plan by former President Buhari between 2021 to 2025. It's going to elapse this year. But the current administration, the same party, are they working with that National Development Plan?
I think they are planning their own
as we speak. So we have two key components in that National Development Plan, which is create 21 million jobs and drive 35 million people out of poverty. But with the recent economic policies we see on ground, are they actualizing that objective? So there's no broad national development plan. Take, for instance, for China, for instance, regardless of, or even India, even recent countries in Africa, like Rwanda, even if they have been authoritarian for a while, countries like South Korea, regardless of your political party, there's a national development agenda for the country that spans, you have to work with it.
Okay, Victor, just one more minute to go. Let's take a look at policy manipulation and self-enrichment in Nigeria. And I'm coming from the perspective that some people really argue that Nigerians' wealthiest individuals are actively involved in shaping policies to protect their interests, you know, as it were. I looked at it a bit yesterday. Do you think that there should be mechanisms to reduce the influence of money in politics? Because that's actually where the foundation is. And how visible is this in Nigeria? Because money politics is so big, so, you know, in Nigeria, whereby everything goes to the highest bidder. And that person may not even be fit for that office. Bearing in mind, at the end of the day, is that politician that is in charge of all of us, 220 million Nigerians, in 4 years, as it were. So what mechanisms can we really put in place? And how can Nigerians really enforce this and really take the country back? In terms of, there are many millions of us that are poor.
So I tell
very
people,
quickly, yes.
Yes, if you look at poverty, it's a tool, it's a weapon in Nigeria. In fact, it's a political model in Nigeria. Even during close to elections, yes, it's a political model in Nigeria. Close to elections, people will become poorer. So if you give them tip, they will collect. And I tell people, literature has said it. Those who control the economy control politics. You can't disassociate politics from economy. And then I tell people, we must have the right individuals in power. But how do we have the right individuals in power? With the current constitution we have, it's a problem. A lot of persons have told us this current constitution we have cannot help us drive development. But how do we achieve it? Nigerians are becoming more conscious in terms of election. Social media has helped us for people to demand for accountability and governance. But how do we disassociate the money from politics when there are integrity issues around the judiciary and institutions, there are integrity issues around the state institutions like the police, the INEC? It's not possible. But with the constitution we have, we can't make headway. We can't.
Okay. Is there a solution?
There's a solution.
Just one, and we have to go. Anyway, you've been talking of solutions before, but what does this administration do just in 20 seconds?
Prioritize trade. I
trade.
think, yes.
Okay. I think we'll continue to look at this because this is one topic that is very close to my heart, you know. Thank you very much, Victor, for coming
very much.
on the show. You know, it seems like the more I dig into it, the more layers.
Yes.
You know, it expands poverty and inequality in the country. That's what we've been discussing in the last few minutes. That's the much you can take on today's edition of the program. Thank you all for joining us again today. It's been so nice bringing you this. Catch up on other interviews on our YouTube channel, Moneyline with Nancy. I'll see you all again tomorrow. Be the best you can be and be the change that you want to see. Bye for now. Thank you for watching. In case this is your first time watching us, thank you. Don't subscribe to the channel, drop your comments as well as like, and most of all, share our content.